Good morning.
Good morning, young lady. How are you?
I'm good.
That's good.
I got your message. Yes, it was already on the agenda to get Holly to get the invitation done. I also think we need a we need a particular specific web page set up for the symposium that includes hotels, restaurants, transportation, all the things that I've done for other conferences. And I'll put that together and you can just link to it. We'll call it
Well,
getting there. Getting
yeah,
there and staying in accommodations.
yeah, local information and stuff like that. Absolutely. Hello, Andrew.
Good to see you this morning. Can't write contracts.
Yeah, cool.
They need to have it in the files.
Exactly. So when you're talking about invitation for the symposium, do you mean separate to the email and separate to the page? What do you mean
A
that?
really nice card that looks like an announcement card that we'll send out so that people can take that. It's not just an email, it's something they can actually put on their desktop.
Okay.
I do this for everything that we have, events for, and it's useful. Contains all the information. One thing I should ask, did we decide not to have Zoom? Are we going to Zoom allow for people coming in by Zoom?
Nobody can present, but people can watch. That's, I
Okay.
think, do you agree
Then
with
I'll
that?
make it Zoom. Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to set up the Zoom link for me? Is this going to be the same one as we're usually using?
I think this one, unless there's a
Okay.
reason to change it.
No.
Uh, Looking for.
No problem.
So is everybody. I know that Mark is not going to make it. So
Yeah.
right. Okay. So what I've been talking to um, friends about over the last few days, I think we've talked about it too. Just to go through is, and also Dini, what I'm talking about now, it's probably going to be my Blue Sky submission. So we need to coordinate who writes what for what topic, so we don't have different papers that stand on each other's feet, obviously.
Okay, so I'm doing a Blue Skies for the team. What are you doing? You're doing a human workshop.
Yeah, but yeah, so well, I don't know who does what, and I don't care as long as we're all happy. Um, but what came up in the meeting with you and Klaus the other day is pretty much what I think the whatever thing that I'm writing will be, and it's for the same work, but we have to decide what aspect the different papers are covering.
Okay, so what we talked about with Klaus, and we better get this organized because I've already started on the Blue Sky paper for the team. And I put that into the chat yesterday. So you're doing the human workshop keynote/paper. Then the team is doing the Blue Skies, and you are going to be with me, Mark, and Peter has also volunteered. I haven't heard from anybody else. So there's 4 of us on that paper. So your human workshop is just you, and that's a paper. The Blue Sky, as we talked about with Klaus, is the team, and it's 4 of us so far. And I have already sent out a note about that, and I'll put in that note what we're talking about. So if you just look at hi, Adam, good to see you again. Hey, Leon. So if you look at the Slack channel, we're talking about the Blue Sky paper and the paper that we're talking about for the conference.
Presentation, right? Yeah.
So just to refresh everybody's memory, when you go to the Hypertext conference, there's not one thing you do that doesn't have a written paper. It goes in the proceedings. Even if you do a demo and it's just showing things, and you have to write a formal paper in LaTeX style, right? So when you say a paper, you're also talking about a presentation or a demo or something. Froda has been invited to keynote the human workshop, which is great.
Not keynote. I did a keynote last year. I'm doing a normal paper this year.
Okay. He's going to be submitting to the human workshop. That's great. And then the team is going to be doing a Blue Sky paper. And yesterday I worked on the beginning of it, and I put into our chat in the Slack channel a little bit about it, right? So I gave you a link to what the Blue Sky paper is. Some people may never have written a Blue Sky, so I gave you a definition of it. And I'm using Overleaf generally, but it costs money every month. So we're going to be using Google Doc, and then I'll put it in Overleaf for the final version.
I think Mark was suggesting Overleaf as well. I think you may have an account, but
I do too. It costs me like $20 a month,
okay.
but it's something that I don't think everybody should have. So Mark and I can get it into final form. We just use Google Docs. So and I see that when I did post that, Mark said he has an account, that's fine. And then Peter wants to be on it. Those are the only two people that have said they wanted to do it besides Froda and me. So if you want to be part of the paper, let me know.
So what I've opened up your Blue Skies presentation document. Do you have an outline or topic for the Blue Skies?
Not yet.
Right. Okay. So
I
for
thought
the
we
human,
talked about it today. What do people want to write about?
yeah, no, that's exactly the point. So anybody can submit a paper really, and in this community we should just coordinate to see which papers we are collaborating on, and if we're writing separate papers, make sure they don't step on each other's toes, so to speak, considering we're probably writing on the same topic, but it connects, which would be good. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Peter. Hi, everybody.
How are you doing, everybody?
Yeah, good. Good. Just want to check something.
Okay, muting so you don't hear me chewing.
Oh, that was a good thing. So yeah, the paper that I want to submit for the human workshop is on doing outlines. And the point of that is, so I'm just trying to open up my document here. There was something weird earlier. Sorry, 1 second. Right, so no, here we go. Okay, so as I've talked to randomly with some of you, we've looked at libraries and worked on libraries. We worked on various ideas of what a library means. Is it a catalog, a reference section? Is it an actual library? So we've also looked at documents. And one thing that really came to mind for me last week was the idea of conference proceedings or journals or a book like our book. In other words, hi Rob. In other words, a document which is produced by many people. And that seems to be a very, very interesting data set rather than an entire library, because an entire library, people have put their own documents in, so they have some idea, what's going on. So what I think will be very exciting for us to focus on with the main software that Andrew is building is someone puts on the headset and they're presenting with the proceedings of this year's Hypertext conference. So the question is then how they can view it. So what I'll do now, if you don't mind, I will show you something. You can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Right. Yeah, scream if you can. So what I've been doing over the last few days, I've taken all the documents in last year's proceedings and copy them over to a new document. So if you look at this, you'll see that these headings, each heading is one paper. Just going to make this a bit wider. The way it's listed, and don't forget, the proceedings are often not released as one document. Very often it's a collection of individual articles. Last year we were lucky. We did have it as one document. However, there's no table of contents. And there's no outline if you open it up in Acrobat or Preview or whatever. So if we look at this, here is two celebrities, hypertextuality and virtual reality. The article itself, I have defined. By defined, I mean I have written the two contributors. Deanie and Rob, they are in bold, meaning they are also defined. The summary, names mentioned, and keywords are AI extracted from that paper. It's not meant to be any kind of pure AI extraction. So in many cases, I've gone in and tweaked things a little bit and edited, right? So the reason I think this is relevant to us will become more apparent in a minute. But here's the first sentence of the abstract, followed by a link. So there's two things to show you. This is the first. Some of you have seen something like this before. So here is a document, a PDF. And as you saw before, there's the title, author name, first sentence of the abstract. But if you click on the citation, you get the second sentence, meaning you get a bit more. If you now click on the title of the document, it opens the original document that has all the proceedings to the right page. So I think that's kind of cool, but that's not really where we're going. What's kind of exciting to me is if you click on the map view at the bottom here, you get something like this. So here we have, there's something very strange that's happened with this document. It doesn't do all the lines. But if I select all the papers, these are all the papers here in the middle, you can see how they're connected to the people and so on. See this?
Mhm.
So my point here really is, this is cool, I think, to an extent, but it would be much better in a XR environment because you need more space. The use case for this is you're going to a conference, you get all these 30-odd papers and put in your lap. This is a way, hopefully, that you can have a better understanding of which papers you want to read. There are some design things that we have to do here. It's not always easy to see where things connect and all of that stuff. And Adam, you saw this working earlier, but for now, for some reason, if I click on the countries, it doesn't do anything. Here's a detail. You can see these are the people that I work with the most, so we're all in a special little bunch, put up like this. So what I'm proposing is that for our main work, we use the current conference proceedings as the core unit of work. We incorporate what Mark and Adam has worked on before to have every single paper that's been in hypertext available in a view. But the initial use case is to have this wide thinking space where the user with really interesting controls, such as tapping on the sphere and using Andrew's display panel, choosing what to see. So that, for instance, Deanie as a user can then use full environment, someone else might want to use columns or whatever, and these different views can be saved.
Bo, is this your personal paper? I mean, the one that I'm putting forward, and I did mention a title, or at least a theme, and that's XR and special hypertext, and I suggested 4 readings. That's the one I'm imagining for the team that we have to do for Sloan. So we're actually doing maybe 3 papers: your human, my human, and then the team paper, which is our Sloan paper. So which one are you talking about? Is that your personal human workshop paper?
I'm not sure exactly what will go in my human paper, but the system ideas that I just showed, the intention is that this will be our focus for the Andrew Thompson's WebXR experience.
So the demo.
Yeah, the demo, and then decide what papers will come out of that, because we've spent a lot of time with interactions, which has been very, very fruitful, and we've had basically reference section views so far, but we've started experimenting with how things connect. So this is kind of an extension of that for a very clear use case. All academics got to go through proceedings, decide what to read and what to throw away and all of that stuff. So this is
We're looking
more
at 4
about our work
papers. We're looking at
this is-
4
this
papers
is-
then.
This is more about the work rather than the papers at this point.
Well, the work has to have a paper. I mean, that's the problem. I mean, the thing that you just showed for Rob and I, we were so surprised because we were just doing a demo because the work hadn't been finished yet. We're like, let's just show you where we are right now. And then we had to write a paper about it. Remember that, Rob? We're like, what?
No, I completely understand that. Absolutely. But what aspects of it will be what paper by what group of people, I think is obviously very, very important to discuss and agree on. But right now,
Okay.
proposing to the group that we expand our work to focus on proceedings rather than a reference section or rather than PDFs freestanding.
Then let me suggest this. You have really great ideas and you got a whole direction you want to go. I would like to write one on XR and spatial hypertext. And so that could be my human or blue sky paper. And anyone that wants to join me on that, I did post 4 articles that came out of ACM over the last, 30 years. And that deal with some aspect of this topic. If you want to join me, fine. If you don't, I'll do it on my own. But it's certainly there and it's in the Slack channel. Just let me know if you want to write with me or not. Okay. And the rest of it, Frodo will lead. I'll let it go like that.
Yeah, so we have to decide on the papers. It is really important, Deanie. And I'm glad we are on track now to start sending out the invitations, which is equally important. But just to take a bit of a poll in the community here on where Andrew's focus should be, what is the feeling of focusing on helping a user deal with a proceedings or a journal as the core atomic unit? Something I'm extremely excited about. Hint.
I just imagined that what we were going to do with Andrew is set up our system and let him show where we are at the moment. Like, here's everything we've done so far, and here's where we're headed. That's what I was imagining we were going to be doing, not necessarily a structured argument of any sort, just a procedure, right? And then we write that up. Here's what here's what the Sloan Foundation grant was expected to turn out. Here's what we've done thus far. Here's the next steps. We're now 9 months into it by then, so here's where we are. We've got a year and a half left, a year and 3 months left. And I thought that's what we're going to be doing for the demo.
Yeah, absolutely.
Leon, question.
Nothing.
So Leon, great question. There is no difference. The proceeding is the journal.
So this is something that Mark also pointed out when I shared some of the initial comments. A journal or compendium book like The Future of Text or Proceedings structurally are the same. They are a collection of articles by different people. The key thing about a proceedings is that they are specifically from a specific conference. A journal could come out, let's say, 3 or 4 times a year, and people may or may not meet, but structurally for what we're talking about, it's the same thing. And what I find very exciting here is twofold, the opportunity. One is the metadata to tie together the individual articles, which may or may not be distributed in one binding PDF. That doesn't always happen. And this also the metadata for the spatial layout, which people may or may not do differently. And then the research to, on the 27-inch screen, this is quite nice, but it's quite clear we need more space. So to use what Andrew has built and is building to have a huge thing, and you can, I talked a little bit earlier with Adam today, and we talked about having the sphere that we have to contain different layouts, so to speak, different workspaces. So that would be something to research. What does that mean? How do you go from one space to another? How do they connect? But the core idea is someone puts on the headset and all they're told is, have a look around, and what's presented in front of them looks initially relatively linear, again, up for discussion, but it is the papers from the current conference that they are at. So they are clearly interested. And then they are explained how they can see it in relation to earlier papers, in relation to people, in terms of keywords, all of these things. So the key aspect here is they can decide which papers are interesting for them. So they can discard some papers, highlight some papers, add some papers to the library. They can highlight some people that they may consider either historically interesting or as colleagues, and some people that they might find doing very different work. They can kind of hide them. All of these interactions then become possible But the key thing is, and I'm so excited, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but instead of being an entire library, just one document, it is one collection of documents. I think that's super exciting.
I just wrote into the chat that proceedings are papers that are presented at an academic conference. The ACM proceedings are peer reviewed and considered top tier. So if you're in those proceedings, that's considered, there's like tiers, like this is a really great one. This is okay. This is not so great. And there's generally 4 tiers, and this is a number 1 tier. A journal article is just published in a journal, and the journals are also ranked. So if you're in something like EBR, which is Electronic Book Review, or what's another good one? I don't know, there's just lots of great journals. Then that's a top tier journal paper, and they're published like maybe twice a year. Journals come out sometimes 4 times a year. They're not, every month, generally academic journals. Proceedings are generally once a year. And then a chapter in a book is what we've been doing with Froda for all these years. The book that we're doing with Froda is not peer reviewed. So when it's not peer reviewed in academics, it doesn't count as much as something that is peer reviewed. And so I'd love to be able to peer review maybe year 2 book, because some of us that are academic could use it. Anyway, so yeah, so peer reviewed, non-peer reviewed.
Right. So one thing I need to have to hear about in the group is who likes the idea of using the proceedings as our core data corpus to do the interactions around.
But that's what we told Klaus on Friday, or whenever it was we met with him, that we were doing.
Yeah, that's what we suggested then, but this is because it's the Peter and Leon. I hope you are not averse to the idea. I see Leon thinking really hard. I see Peter smiling from long ago. Okay, no, that's good. Okay, so that means we can start some really exciting things. Peter.
Yeah, I also think that we should incorporate that metadata that isn't part of the actual document in the corpus, so that we can use visual meta to show linkages between elements of the corpus that aren't part of the actual items themselves. I think that's where we're really adding a lot of value that's being lost to catalogs now, because we don't have that collaborative aspect to allow recording external metadata.
Yeah, absolutely, Peter. That's crucial. And I keep referring to, I'm just going to put in a link here, excuse me. Boom, link to an image on Twitter. That's the Peter contribution, to be able to do exactly that, to be able to decide what is the actual metadata, the core metadata of a document, and then external to that, how is it laid out? I want to be able to save my layouts and go into, from my own computer, into what Andrew's done, what Adam's done, whatever, with that layout information, change it and go back. So what doesn't change and what does change will be hugely important. Andrew, I'd like you to interrogate us a little bit, because obviously this is a little bit just poured all over your head. I'm sure you have questions to make sure you're happy.
So, from my understanding, this isn't so different from what I had in mind. Sorry, there's something in my eye today. I think it's an eyelash. I knew we wanted to have like viewing modes in the library that changes the layout of things, and we wanted connections between the documents. Of course, those aren't implemented yet, but I've been thinking that we're going to get to that at some point. And maybe because I didn't know exactly the difference between that and this seems like the same thing to me, where it's like now we're focusing more on the library viewing modes. It's like, yeah, that makes sense. So I'm totally on board. I thought that was the direction we were already going.
The only difference,
And
please continue, I'm sorry.
I was just saying the only thing is I wasn't ready to implement it yet because we're trying to get document viewing. But that's going along well, and I'll have a rudimentary version by Wednesday. It's not going to handle all the edge cases, like tables don't render properly, the images don't show up. But at that point, we can decide if we want to switch focus from getting like all the content of the document rendering properly, or we could be like, yeah, it's fine. It's just for like a preview. The focus is the library, and I can switch over to that. So that's totally fine by me.
Yeah, okay, that's very cool. Yeah, the only real change here is the scale we're working at. So again, anybody disagree with me, please interrupt. Just don't even do a hand. The way that I see it is that if we look at it like physics as an analogy, we have elementary particles. Elementary particles here are authors' names, keywords, and titles of document. Those are the molecules in these views, right? They come together to make bigger things like atoms and all of that stuff. And the reason it's a fun analogy is we have the sphere. So if we imagine we have one layout that is one sphere, these layouts can go together in Fabian style connected blocks. And now it looks like a molecule, right? I don't know what any of that means. I think this will be phenomenally interesting to research. But one thing I'm thinking about is the view that, you know, I spent 2 days making the metadata for last year's, obviously not the entire days, but it took a long time to manually do it as a test. So I could imagine a very simple view in XR or in a normal screen where you have all the papers in a list, and you can keep doing this until you read the actual entire paper there in HTML in plain text, right? That should be possible. So it can be really boring, but all the metadata is there. And we also need to research things, meaning discuss it and test. What AI will we use? I think we should use AI for entity extraction, but I am also wary if we go overboard with AI that we will get nonsense. So it has to be some level of editor's involvement here. So one of the key things all this work is about is suggesting better metadata handling from publishers. So I'm not saying this should just be a automatic process at all, but because we work closely with the ACM, you know, we present this as our perfect case study. This is what you need to do to replicate it. Fabian.
Yes, it's briefly on the AI part. It's just like, it's not my interest. I understand it's trendy and there are powerful things even possible with it. And I would feel more comfortable with, I think I mentioned it chatting with you the other day, with something a bit more generic, like document transformation. Then it can be entity extraction, it can be summarizing all this. But I think it removes a little bit some of the hype. If it works, I understand. So yeah, just like transformation or text or content transformation, it doesn't imply how it's done. Maybe there is a human being fixing it. Maybe it's NLP, maybe it's machine learning, it's whatever. So yeah, that's what I would tend to prefer.
I agree with you 100% on that, Fabian. And when I say AI, I am saying it a bit provocatively in the group, so we don't hide behind words. However, we are talking about the same thing, and you know how we choose to present it later to the wider world is important. The language we choose, we can say machine extraction of entities, or maybe AI, depending on how we really feel about it later. But one of the things that bothered me before doing different views is that if you do an AI summary, it's so useless, because if anything looks interesting, you want to read the original stuff anyway, right? So where does it fit? So it really comes down to the boring level, just like what you said, names and keywords, that kind of stuff. And with a human in the loop to make sure that the period of the name isn't in the wrong place, etc. Okay, so now that we've gone through this, Dini pointed out something important here.
I'm writing this, let me finish this up.
Oh, you're starting, okay.
So we should list the papers that we're suggesting. We're now talking about 4. So there's 2 opportunities left, and the deadline is May 26th. The blue skies are provocation papers. And then there's workshops. And one of them that fits us is the human workshop. And that's the one that Klaus is overseeing. So I'm interested in a Blue Skies paper, which I laid out for us in the Slack channel. If anyone wants to join me on that one, the topic is XR and hypertext. And frankly, there's not been much work done on this topic at all. I mean, I went through yesterday and spent the day going through the proceedings for ACM hypertext for the last, since 1995. And I only found a handful that applies to exactly what we're looking at. And I didn't want to overwhelm you with like 50, so I picked the top 4 and put that in the base camp for you. So you have all this, you have all the articles there you should read. We should start with reading those references and then shape our paper around that. So read first, then write the paper. So rather than say, this is what we're going to write about, and then go look for papers, we should see what's been said already, and then, come up with our research question and then a paper. It doesn't have to be any longer than 6 pages, which is really short, but it's definitely the way that I want to go. And if you want to join me on that one, that's fine. We also have to have one for the Sloan Foundation, and that I agree should be the proceeding. So Frodo will lead that one, and he will set up a Google Doc for that. We also have testing that we need to be doing.
Google
What,
Doc.
Frodo?
I'm
Or
not.
whatever you want to do. I mean, certainly we got to have something we can all write on, right? We don't want to be passing a paper around. It needs to be something we can all share at the same time. The bibliography is not counted towards a page count, Peter. So we have 6 pages total. And then Fabian says, I'd be up for writing on manipulating grammars in XR, either Blue Sky or Workshop. Workshop be fantastic if you want to do that. That'd be wonderful. And we all can submit to Human, because Klaus is looking for new people to come in. He also says he's short on papers, and so he's really interested in what we're doing and also beefing up his workshop. The workshop, just so you know, the Hypertext Conference is very, very weird, because you start with day 1 is like a series of workshops, and workshops, from my perspective, is people getting into a room together and working on something together. Workshops for ACM hypertext is actually papers around a theme. And so there's a half a day on Human, a half day on another one. And there's like 2 days of workshops, and then the conference starts. And the conference presentations are the Blue Skies, the provocations, and the formal papers. The deadline for those formal papers have passed. We didn't do that one. We didn't make that deadline. We weren't ready to. But the May 26th is for workshops, provocation, Blue Sky. So the 2 types. Anyway, and if we do a demos are also part of that first, like during the conference time, but it's also the later May 26th deadline. That is also a paper. It can be a very short, like 1-page thing. So that's great, Bob. So you'd be on Blue Skies with me. Perfect. We already started this last year. We'll just continue.
So we
And
mustn't.
I'm hoping Mark will work with me too.
So we mustn't forget, we also need papers for our book, which will be a different angle for this, which is something that is literally in the Sloan Foundation thing. So that's one thing. So when you are talking about the Blue Skies with hypertext and XR, Dini, how directly is that related to the code we're building?
Oh, very much so. Some of the things I'm thinking about, what I was thinking about yesterday, and I got it down into a rabbit hole, which is what happens when you start thinking about these papers, is that most of these papers are talking about spatial hypertext in terms of objects. So it's the way we organize information. So the information is the object that's being manipulated, and it's visualized in some way. It's different than a data visualization. It's a structural visualization that's very organized, right? And they mentioned things like, HyperCard, Story Space, Tinderbox, all these different hypertext systems. What they haven't talked about yet is what happens when people are also in that same space as the objects themselves. What does that mean? For example, our role as the producer of these spaces, as well as the participant in these spaces, as well as part of the objects in that space. It changes the whole dynamic. That's a big rabbit hole because it means I'm going in a direction that not many people have looked at in this field. But what is the human aspect of it? What does it mean to be in this space as a human being and be an object? And I'm thinking specifically about the persona, the spatial personas. And we've been doing spatial persona for a while. I mean, that meta system that we played in Froda a couple of weeks ago, whenever it was. I mean, we're like little bobbleheads
Oh,
in
you
this
mean,
space.
you mean FaceTime?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for this little bubble. No, well, the FaceTime thing is what Apple's doing, but I'm talking about that meta system that we were in for the presentation. Remember, we did a presentation with those with the
Oh,
folks.
Mozilla Hubs. I think it was
Oh, that
Mozilla
Yeah,
Hubs.
thing.
Mozilla Hubs.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
and we're
Oh, the
little
cartoon
bobbleheads in
people.
the system.
Yeah, the cartoon people. Right.
Well, I mean, it was cool. I mean, this is what this is what Meta's all about, right? Because I've done the Meta presentations too. But you are this little bubblehead inside this space and you're interacting with each other and you get close to each other to hear. We back away, you don't necessarily hear what people are saying. So, and then you have a screen and you're all looking at the screen. So there is already this kind of spatial hypertext in which human beings are inside the space with the objects.
Are we going to directly support multi-user for what Andrew is building though? Would we be able to do that?
At some point, it'd be nice. It's not part of our project, but it's a stretch goal, huh?
Oh, but no, but since you're saying, because I wondered from what you're talking about with the human and hypertext, what that meant in terms of our current coding. So that is a little outside of that, isn't it?
I don't think it changes anything because it doesn't matter. He's making these objects for XR and we're all coming in through FaceTime and interacting with them. So it's not really changing anything he's doing. What changes is that
no, but the system that Andrew's building now is a single user. User is in the center of it, kind of on a swivel chair. So that's a very specific interaction. We're also, of course, looking at other ones. But in terms of the specific, yeah, sorry, I see you kind of have a hand up there, Adam.
Yeah, but isn't Blue Sky really Blue Sky in kind of the long forward direction? I'm not a native English speaker, but Blue Sky should be what Dean is talking about, like the direction we are going or want to go or could go, and not just the practical. Here is a proceedings as we just in XR, but we need to be much further on in the thoughts here to do something interesting.
Oh, 100%.
Thank you, Adam. Yes, that's
Yeah.
precisely it. It's supposed to be like, what's possible? Like, where are we headed? What's the possible way we're headed? Here's where we are right now. Here's what's happening in the Apple Vision Pro world of the spatial hypertext, the spatial personas. Here's what could happen in this space with the stuff we're doing.
Yeah.
But I'm focusing.
I
Let me just finish one more thing. But I want to focus on hypertext. That's the key thing because the conference is hypertext. So we can't just talk about XR. We've got to talk about something that's hypertextual in nature. So what I'm interested in, Peter, is what happens when human beings are hypertextual objects. And so can we at some point with the hubs that we were in, when we got close to someone, this reminds me of Klaus's mother project. As we got close to one of the avatars, we could hear them. So the spatial part of it was, there was this kind of spatial hypertext involvement in which we could get close to somebody and actually interact with them. As we moved away, we couldn't hear them necessarily, right? So there is this hypertextuality that's already in place. And so that's there, right? But what does that mean? So the Blue Sky part is what happens, what can happen in the future, and what does it mean when it does happen? Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. The only thing I was trying to establish is of the different papers we are writing, which ones more directly relates to basically writing up the work that we're building.
Well, not mine. Mine is not part of that. I mean, I'm doing my own Blue Sky with anyone who wants to. You're going to lead the one for the Sloan Foundation team because you've got that vision. This is just something different that I think will be useful. I mean, last week when we talked, you told me I was going to be doing the team one, but it sounds like you have a much better idea of how to make this work for the proceedings.
I don't care about the papers very much at all. I care that they're good quality and done correctly. What I really care about is that we build a system that will blow people's brains when they put the headset on in the day. So that's why I'm so re-energized by having this proceedings being our main world thing, and just trying now to establish how that's going to be written up, and who will be the the authors on that. I mean, the thing that I wouldn't mind writing is basically an intelligent outline thing. That could be my paper. But I think we'll need one main paper to say this is the thing that we built anyway.
And I think you should lead that. And that's great. You have, I mean, what you're talking about with meta, visual meta and all of that is perfect. And the one I want to do is different from that. It's more of a blue sky.
Yeah. No, that
And you're
makes
talking, yeah, so that's fine. And then we also have testing. We've got to do some testing there. And we have some
Oh.
money for testing.
Talking of testing, sorry, Peter, just one more second. I think it's July, and Southampton is going to be doing some VR day for their staff. I'll be going to show the Vision Pro and also introduce our work to them. So I'll be talking to a lot of educators about this. I don't know anything more about that. Of course, I'll collaborate with you guys as to what should be shown that day, but it's a nice deadline to know it's coming up. Peter.
Yeah, in addition to representing individual users within the space, I think we should also represent software artifacts that are applicable and operating in the space. And the main example of this is if you look at the JavaScript ecosystem, you have a control file called package.json. And that's where you provide the metadata for all of the packages that the program that you're building is going to be dependent upon. And that can either be done as a hierarchy of package.json files for a whole network of related projects, or there can be a single top-level package.json file that contains all of the dependencies for everything underneath it, however many layers you go. Then monorepo software was developed, which basically automates controlling the relationships between those different sub-packages. So with the monorepo package like Moon, you can automatically synchronize the packages so that if I change a dependency at the top level, that can then get applied to update the dependencies at all of the lower levels. The other critical element in package.json files is that they usually have a scripts field in which you put in the command line formulas to invoke whatever tooling you're using to work on your repository. And to avoid having to type in the individual things, you then are able to sort of abstract out over that, and you can have run dev as your command, as opposed to imba -- watch -- output directory, whatever, and all of the long, complicated details. You can just sort of subsume that in the name. So the monorepo software is then able to extract those scripts from the package.json file and give you a user interface so that instead of looking at the scripts and having to remember them, you get a little widget in your Visual Studio Code sidebar showing you your hierarchical decomposition of sub-projects. And when you twist down the expansion tab on each of them, you get just the names of the scripts, and you can click on it to run that script. And it makes your workflow so much more efficient. Now, in our context, any scripts that are being applied to our conference proceeding collection to do things like maybe run an external tool to generate a concordance of all of the words that appear within the locus could be represented as a script. And then in our visual meta, we should have, build concordance, and then whatever the linkages are to the tooling so that the system could automatically do that. But that then becomes an element within the data space. And where we are having searches control what's working, that search could be represented in a Benedictine cyberspace as an actual point. And that point would represent the query upon the dimensions that that point is, that would then cause the script that we've linked to through our visual meta to be invoked on the overall data set. So then you'd be able to visually see what all the queries are that are currently operating on the data space. You'd be able to see a representation of what queries are that the users in the data space are currently operating on. So now may imagine a three-dimensional space, and one of the dimensions is, name of the sub-project that the person is looking at, and another dimension could be what kind of a task he's doing. Then I could see that at the moment, Fabian is inside of subrepository 4, and he's writing a code review of the file that he's finding there. So I'd be able to see what the other person's looking at from the location of their representation in the space, along with what tools are applicable to that location. So that's sort of where my thing is going, because Benedictine cyberspace is sort of tossed on the wayside, because when Benedict did that book, we just simply did not have the JavaScript ecosystem and all of the wonderful tooling to be able to implement it. We had the same thing happen in law when Stuart Sutton wrote his dissertation on visualizing and working with institutional memories in law. There was absolutely no technology to implement any of it. So he had his wonderful dissertation describing what the visualizations would look like, what the underlying data structures would look like. But because the tooling wasn't there, nothing happened. And that work got semi-lost to the ages, except for a few people like me who keep running around every 5 to 10 years, shouting people, take a look at that. Okay, done with brain dump.
Right. Briefly, I see Adam's got his hand up. You really, really need to pick an Uber and drive to the Apple Store and use the headset. You just have to, because the Benedictine stuff is rubbish, half of it. Other half is brilliant, purely because it now exists the opportunity to use it. So to figure out the brilliant from the stuff that just doesn't work means experimenting and experiencing it again and again and again. So many things. Adam introduced a new term to me the other day, which is spiderweb. Lines in XR can be horrible because of spiderweb. Looking at the Benedictine stuff, which conceptually all of it is great, when you start implementing it, it just doesn't work. And that is what innovation is. That is not at all a criticism of his book. I think we will invite him to our book. But Peter, you desperately need to put the thing on your head, play with it. You get half an hour demo for free in the Apple Store, no matter what anyway. So I think that would really inform some of your design decisions. Adam.
So Mark and I we are also writing a paper, or are attempting to, kind of taking the reference visualization we had in 2D and trying to do it in XR. It's already working, but not that useful yet, because we don't. So we need to find out what's most useful. But it needs to write up in paper form in order to be presented, as you know. So we're going to write some sort of short paper for the practitioner track. So so one question is how this paper, if it should slot into Sloan future text stuff, or if it should be on the side somewhere. So that's I'm just saying it so we could kind of, sometimes it's useful to combine you have different hats and so on, depending on the needs here.
I'm gonna be honest with you, Adam. I think any kind of paper we do is going to be great under the guise of the GIS of the future of text and XR. The more papers we can go to Sloan with at our year-end report and say we did 4 papers at this conference, and oh, by the way, we did this and this and this and this, because Andrew and I are also doing a demo at the Electronic Literature Organization conference in July. And I'll be talking about the project at the MLA, the Modern Language Association, in January in New Orleans. So anytime we do any of this work, it looks really good to a funder. And if we want more money in the future, it shows output. I mean, the thing they want to know is how are we sharing this information? What's the dissemination plan? And right now we have a very modest one, right? ACM hypertext, 1 paper. Now we've got potentially up to 4. Maybe more. We also have, the book is also already included in this, but what else can we do? And we have lots of conferences and presentations and things we're doing outside of what we promised. That looks good. So if anybody wants to write a paper for ACM hypertext on your very own or in different teams, God willing, please do it. But it'd be good to reference the grant and the program.
And of course, it's also very nice for us to be able to cite each other's papers within the same conference. So if we collaborate correctly time-wise, we can do that. So Adam, as also Brandel, just 10 seconds for you as a recap. One of the things we decided on as the object of work is not just a document or an entire library. It is the conference proceedings, because that is a collection of many documents that every academic will have to go through to decide what to read and what not to read. And it also is relevant to them putting it on for that conference itself. So with relation to what you're talking about, Adam, the way that I see it is that we build a core, put your headset on, here's the conference proceedings, see it as a list, see it as a map. Wow, how amazing. And then you choose to interact with something older. And that would then open up what Adam and Mark have been working on, because that is the historic breadth, so to speak. So that becomes maybe another sphere, maybe another window. We don't know yet. So the papers can also kind of overlap in that sense. And also, I look forward to deciding what should be encapsulated in these little spheres. Some of them will just be plain layouts. Some of them, Peter, will definitely be the kind of code you talk about if we can do it. But what will be very, very exciting as well is if we can do the Fabienne style, here's a thing, and we programmatically somehow say how it relates to another thing. So you start having a very interesting grammar of the space. So as we keep developing this over the next few weeks, we will figure out more how it fits. Paper and don't forget the deadlines for the paper it's not the full paper that has to be written now, it's the proposal, right? And then the full paper, right, Dini, is a bit later?
We submit the whole thing. The whole thing has to be a paper submitted.
Yeah, but in order for it to be approved, we don't have to submit the final paper in May, or do we? We do, okay. I thought.
What's your peer review?
Okay, all
I'm
right.
I'm on peer review committee, so I'm going to be expected to look at the full papers to make a, determination whether or not it's acceptable. We also have awards committee, so it'd be nice to see our big paper win an award, right? So, and I'm hoping Rob will be on the award committee with me that I'm sharing. Thanks. It's an award committee for the Michael Joyce Award that we're instigating. So yeah, so full papers. That's why I want to get us moving on mine as fast as possible.
Just going to copy a link in here. So just pasting in the chat, if you guys can have a look whenever you have a minute, or rather a few minutes. Oh no, that's the long one. Hang on, this is very odd. Let me give you a second one, I'm so sorry. Boom, yeah, so the first one is Adam and me having a chat today. Now, Adam, having kids and time differences being difficult, will probably need more daytime European time as well. So we all need to find out the balance between when we're all together, when we do different groups, how we report to each other, and so on. So the second one is the one I suggested you look at. It's quite short. Talking of which, you have to go. That's okay, Adam. See you later. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to bow at the top of the hour too. I have to get on the road.
Me too. I've got a meeting at 9 with an artist.
I have a meeting at 9 also.
So I just, as a brief re-summary, partly using you as an excuse there, Randall coming in now. But so these are all the papers from last year. We would have something similar. And then we can do this kind of stuff to see connections of things. I want this to be ready as soon as possible, Andrew. And of course, that doesn't mean just you working. That means that we all have to decide on what database, what metadata goes in and how we generate it, how we get it. It means that we need to discuss the basic layouts, what people should just choose themselves, like maybe keywords. There's something strange here. Not all of them are working right now. I have to restart my machine. Because I expect with the different personalities in the group and the different use cases, there's going to be very, very different ways we're going to be interacting with this kind of information and moving things around. So later, Peter. Any thoughts on how we should move ahead to implement this? Because we need the metadata, the data, the display, and the interaction. These are very specifically different things we need to work on.
How are you planning? So with my paper, I'm using Google Docs and you're not. So how are you planning to have us all work together on one doc? What format will that be?
I don't know yet at all.
Okay. All right, well, I got to go. So once you let us know in the Slack channel how you want to proceed, but I would divide up whatever paper style you're using, whatever tool, divide it in those 4 areas. Give us some particular readings that we might want to start with. We should probably look at a few things. We have references. And I will set up a Google Doc and drop the Google Doc URL in our Slack channel for folks that want to work with me on the XR and hypertext. Thank you, Rob, for joining me on that one.
Let's talk off.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Thank you too.
Right. So now we're half. Yeah, all this paper stuff we'll have to get our heads around. We also need to start inviting people, and for Future of Text is getting a bit down to the wire. Anyway, we have the top brains left in terms of making stuff. Any thoughts, guys, on how to go about creating a viable system whereby a publisher such as ACM can publish with the right kind of metadata so these views can be generated?
What do they need right now? Like, I presume that this is for the proceedings, like the listings of papers, or for.
Yeah, so my dream is very, very simple, and it seems there is buy-in for this. And that is, we now manually do it, manually with some AI assistance, whatever. Write this big thing, which can be read as a linear document with every single paper. Let's say it is an HTML, so you can expand and contract as you want to. And then all of the documents are defined items so that you can do it in the dynamic map view as well. In order for that to be possible, each document must at least have some keywords, author names, and I prefer also any names mentioned available. So when you select stuff, you can then see connections. The things you select on the map also have types, such as person, document, location, or event. There doesn't seem to be that many more useful ones. So you can toggle all of the category on or off, which is very useful, because when you toggle them on, they're all selected, at least in author, meaning that you can then move them all, and you can do layout commands, such as turn them into a column instantly. Further stuff we need is the ability for the user to say what's important or not. You know, some authors are important because they're other friends or colleagues. Some are important because they're titans in the field and they may even be deceased. They wouldn't have authored a paper. These seem to be special categories that are useful for layouts. For instance, if I want to see who's written about history, one of the things I can see is if Ted Nelson and Doug Engelbart are in the papers. You know, that's one example keyword. So the whole idea is what I'm desperate to build with you guys is essentially a table, an interactive, intelligent table of contents or outline for proceedings, where you can view things in many ways, but you can also read each article in full. Proceedings, by the way, Brandel, as of course you know, but just to highlight the relevance, is exactly the same as a journal or a book like The Future of Text. The idea is it contains freestanding articles by same or different authors. Andrew, it's worth mentioning the reader guys are working on the JSON to be able to provide you with a useful JSON right now. They just asked me some more questions, which is always good. That means they're working.
Is this going to be in the
With the
same
question-
format of the template that I sent in, or will this be like something they're designing that I will sort of work around?
Yours.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's going to be that, but that's what they're trying.
Aspirational. I like that. So if the question is how to allow publishers to produce media that has the ability to be compatible with the thing. I think making sure that we have a reasonable sort of overview of what publishers will do by default is an important first step, because it's very difficult to have leverage over people to do anything that you need until they know that there's a value in it. So being able to work with as closely as possible to something that is achievable on their side in the first place is a good start for us. And I think we're well into that. We have that kind of covered. One of the things that proceedings don't particularly have the ability to do, nor does a journal, is provide sort of level of detail overviews of itself in terms of what the different sections of content are. They're all sort of meant to be observed in a particular sort of way at a certain degree of remove or lack of remove. You're right up in the context in the conference proceedings, and so you don't need to have 1,000-foot or 10,000-foot views of what each of the themes or the topics are and stuff like that. So from the perspective of the tool and the environment that is created to live in that work after the fact, then having the ability to reacquaint oneself with those highest level sections and regions would be something that by default is not being provided by the book, by the publication or the proceedings, to my mind. And so trying to attend to that as a responsibility would be important from the perspective of the tool. Does that make any sense?
It does. Let me just show you this. So I took all the proceedings of last year and made them a section each. So it's the title, author names, first sentence of the abstract, and this, which I'll show you in a second. Each title is a defined term, which has the author name, so it can connect to those, and AI-generated summary, but also keywords and extracted names. For some reason here they are together. If you look at here, it has names separate, right? So that means on the first, most basic level, as we've kind of seen before, you can read through this, and if you find something interesting, let's say this one, click here, and that reveals the second sentence of the abstract. But if you now click on it, it opens the full document to that page, the document I was cited for. So that's a little bit of the connected thing. But what we're talking about now is really going that next step of going into the map, which you've seen, of course, you've implemented it in WebXR, because then we can do things like this. Now I can see that most people in the group that I work with are UK based, for instance. There are some design issues here. One thing I'm trying to do is when you select something, whatever it points to, it should be much bolder. Now, for some reason, it doesn't always work. The selections, like right here, it's hard to see Philip Mai, anyway, these are visual points, but what I'm trying to say is if we build an environment like this in WebXR, where you have opportunities to, do layouts a little bit automatically, like context menus or whatever, I can do something like this now, made a mess. So I can now do hide documents. All the documents are gone. Bring them back. They're all here. And then I do this and this, and now they're laid out, right? So you can do that in a space, because doing every single thing manually is, of course, not optimal. So that's part of it. But then once you've spent the time and effort to get these things the way you want to be able to obviously save these layouts in little spheres. You may also, and this was what Adam talked about earlier, I've made a map of the world just with the names, just for fun. That could be a little element that could be inserted. You know, we can choose who, you know, people to hide, people to show. People would be able to choose what kind of keywords are relevant and so on. So we need the way to store this metadata. Some of it should be produced by the publisher. Some of it, when you do the layout, will be produced by the user. And that which is produced by the user needs to be shareable as well and storable. And I think we've talked about doing graphs and maps literally for years. Now that we're doing the proceedings, I'm so happy we have a frame to do it in.
As you were looking through that stuff just then, one of the things that I was thinking a lot about was the type matrix, the balance of different families of type and scale and weight in order to make sure that the most relevant sort of things were visible. And you know, if you've ever seen on social media people writing things like, you will read this first, then this second, and then this third, and the type is arranged in different colors with different font weights and stuff like that. There are ways of sort of prioritizing the different pieces of it in a way that means that they simply jump out at you. I think one of the questions that will come up for people if they are using a system like this is, are they reading or are they scanning? Because when you read, you're committed to being able to follow something. You have a reasonable capacity for leveraging your short-term memory, often at the expense of what else you're doing. But when you're scanning, then you're looking for much more coarse-grained signals. And so having the ability to have not just bolder things, but also just comparatively larger, and also I think that the maximum of 30 M is a really good rule of thumb. It's not 30 characters, that's 30 M's in a variable width font, so that can get up to 55 characters or so. But yeah, when people are sort of viewing things in that mode, like it's a lot easier to follow. And to your point, Frodo, like it might not always be title. It often will be, but sometimes it'll be author, to see if they are specific authors that you like and things like that. So yeah, just thinking about what people might be doing and what might be the most visible way to render the details that are germane to them in a way that sort of stands out rather than something that they need to kind of seek out.
Yeah, absolutely. And the notion here is, and I don't know, there's something broken with this document because it doesn't follow through, right? But yeah, everything you said. I mean, here are all the documents. After a while, you don't want to see all the documents. Right? There will be some you've had a look at, and you've read it or skimmed it, and you don't want it to appear. So you need a convenient way to get rid of it. And also, some people who are the people you work with, you want to see their documents immediately. So to be able to decide what is visible is important. It may not be anything like this layout at all. But what I think we need to get is to a point as soon as possible where it is possible to start playing with these things. And also, Andrew, for this, I can try to export it in different ways so that you have at least this to experiment with. We don't have to wait for the next year. Because some of it's pretty cool. Some of it's absolutely not. Like, I didn't know that Dini wrote so many papers last year. And right now, for some reason, back and forth doesn't work, but I can see. Yeah, anyway, we're all excited by the idea of doing mapping stuff, right? And we're all happy with proceedings as being kind of the main view. Adam wanted to take what Adam and Marcus done before and be able to go back into that. That'll be amazing. So to have a view like this and then, hang on, what is this cited? And then start that journey. So, Andrew, what do you want for this to be possible?
What do I want for this to be possible? I don't know. I would need the JSON again. It doesn't seem that out there. It just would, take some experimenting. And we'd have to go through it like each step. Like, what do we want to add this week? Okay, we want to have the lines show up when you point at the author or something like that. Like we do it in steps. I'd say what I don't see, we don't have the keyboard shortcuts. So the whole hide and show thing, we'll have to have a different solution. And I know there was a discussion like last week about potentially removing the pop-up menu. So we'll need to have a better solution for that than if we get rid of the pop-up menu.
Well, we have the touch the sphere and you have this thing, right? Control panel.
One thing I did want to sort of pitch as a suggestion, since originally opening up the library view of the sphere was going to be like something you do occasionally to grab a document. And now it sounds like that might be the primary focus. So I would recommend swapping the functions of the wrist. So tapping opens the library and holding is the sort of debug menu thing, since we don't end up using that menu much and we're going to use the library a lot. So I'm thinking of just swapping the functions. If that sounds reasonable to you guys.
I'm not sure because I could imagine the control panel thing being where you choose what to hide and what to show and layouts. I mean,
Yeah, I could see that, but also as of right now, we're not really using it for anything besides like
oh no, but we've been
dev stuff.
We've been in the reference section for quite a while. We've had a lot of learning there. So this new thing would be, okay, hang on. Just share screen again. I imagine the new screen would open up something like this. It would literally be all, or maybe like this. And then we would do interactions to get it like this. But once you're here, for instance, if I do this and mess it up, for me now, I do Command Shift bracket left to do that. It's a Mac thing. That would be probably much better to have as a button on the control thing. And if I now press V for vertical layout, that's there. We don't have a keyboard necessarily for what we're doing, obviously. But these are very, very handy things. We do have this.
Okay. I'll leave the menu buttons as they are then for now, in case we want to put the functions there. Sounds reasonable.
Where is institution? Yeah. So these are the workshops. So you can see they're kind of different. Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting journey. The earlier meeting today did go quite far into the paper writing side of it, which is obviously important time-wise. We also need how we're going to go about this, because there will probably be very, very different needs, even in this group, for what should appear. So what I suggest we do is, I'll try to export this for you. And you try to put it in. And if we just have a way where we separate the imported metadata from the user spatial metadata, that in itself, I think, will be a huge start. If
Yeah, and
that-
I won't need that until Wednesday at the earliest because I'll be working on the sort of rough document reading until then. So no rush on it.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just exported an HTML. I don't think it has much to do with the I'll just open it here with the text edit. That's not very interesting. Right. So, Brandel, you're probably the only person in the group not excited about tomorrow. Well, maybe Andrew, Fabian or not, but I'm excited about tomorrow. There will be new Apple things.
Oh, yeah, I guess there will be. Yeah, I don't know what they are. That's novel for me. I mean, obviously, everything seems to be about an Apple Pencil, but that it'll be really interesting to see what that is.
It will be. We talked over a year ago about having an Apple Pencil with a Vision Pro. Obviously, not knowing the name Vision Pro, but if anything like that happens, that'll be kind of interesting. But we'll see. So they can, these things can go in many directions as they have done. But
Yes, yeah.
But Brandel, from your perspective, you don't have a lot of time for this now, I understand. However, I think that from what you've done with the different book presentations and so on, being able to get our teeth into proceedings is very much up Brandel's street. Because in addition to the kind of stuff you saw, this same metadata should be able you to have spatial layouts.
Yeah. Yeah, well, so that's where, my feedback related to level of detail is sort of located, is trying to figure out what it is that you can do to provide presentations at a certain point in a viewer's or a user's relationship with the content. A book as an artifact does a couple jobs at a couple different levels. Obviously, it contains all of the text, but it also stands in as a fiducial, as a marker of the contents of the text. And a number of the times we use a book, we're actually not even consulting the text, it just happens to be the thing that we know has the text in it if we were to look for it. And so thinking about those different levels and making sure that things can remain legible between them, like we sort of forget that they don't have to be the same thing at all times in order to do that job. And the beauty of a digital space, digitally mediated information space, is that you can pick the right entity for that job, providing that there's enough conceptual, philosophical continuity between what it is when you use it as this versus when you use it as that, and you can transition between them. So, yeah, I think being able to pursue a space that allows you to make decisions, because the thing is about what we're talking about with the proceedings, with all of these things, is that we're not simply presenting them in a neutral context, in the sense that that's the same job for everybody, and we can do it better or worse. What we mean by that is that we want to furnish a user of our system with the ability to make choices and glean information for making better choices about what they're doing with the contents of the text, and orient themselves as they navigate the different sort of chunks of information and the choices that they're making with regard to how they're cleaving documents apart if necessary, marking those things up. It's a very active process, even when people aren't physically manipulating things, they're creating an orientation in relation to all of these things. And so that where is the user in all of this is the thing that I think is the most, our vocabulary for understanding that that is the goal of creating information space is the most starved at the moment, because we have this sense that like you got papers, that's just what they are, and like the user is an observer, is a sort of a neutral party to what it is that they're doing amongst all of those things. And impoverished is the word I meant, rather than starved. And that nothing could be further than the truth from the truth. So yeah, that's just what I'm thinking about at the moment, is that the embodiment of that, of the user and the choices they make, and how to bring those to the fore.
Yeah, absolutely. That is super important. So this makes me upset again that Alan Laidlaw is not active in the group anymore, because he was good at pointing out those types of things. So that's a loss. I hope he'll come back. I do text him every once in a while. The two other things. One is I came across this weird thing the other day that led to, some people talk about ease of use. Doug Engelbart, as you know, hated the notion of ease of use, but of course things cannot be difficult. But this other thing, they talked about tape cassette recorders from the 70s and all kinds of things, and they had this great perspective of, if you want your product to be successful, your user should feel that they are good at it. Right? Which is an amazing framing, I think. Like if it's a computer game, you should be allowed to feel that you're good at it. Even if it's a pair of scissors, you know, the weight, the balance, you should feel you're good at it. In other words, it should convey a feeling of skill upon the user without being patronizing. Isn't that fantastic? So I'm using that thinking now with author, someone new sitting down, don't care about this stuff. What can I do to help that user feel like they're good at it? I mean, of course, with a pen or a sword or all these things, there are specific things you can do. How can we do it in software? And that relates extremely much to the second point. I keep talking about the importance of the right resolution with photography, and last few days I finally found out why I think it's important. It comes from audio. A friend of mine is married to an audio engineer. It turns out they realized that she gets a headache if she listens to low bitrate MP3s, because the brain has to do too much work to fill in the gaps. I think when we're looking at an image like we're looking at each other now, which is low resolution, when we're looking at each other, we cannot do more than glance. If we're looking at a retina quality, human eye resolution image, photograph or whatever, and it is of the quality where there isn't anything obscured, our eyes can rest. We don't have to make up for what's missing. So on an artistic level, I think that is beautiful, because it allows you to really look at something and not just look at its splodges, but look at the thing as much as if you're there. The time is frozen, right? This relates to our work in spatial thing in the sense that I really want us to develop a system for high resolution thinking. That in the future, if you worked in this space and you take it off, you will feel that you're looking at a smudged version of your world. And in parallel, we need to build the interaction so that with a little bit of training, the user should feel proud that they are good at it. Good at high resolution thinking.
No, I think that's reasonable. Yeah, I've been given that feedback about giving people instructions on stuff, that you shouldn't tell them that something is easy. You should make them feel like they're badass and awesome for being able to follow what you're doing, and to try to make it as easy as possible. I also remember talking to a bunch of folks who worked at Zynga when it was sort of a more relevant affair to sort of contemporary culture. The people who make Farmville and things like that. I think Farmville still exists. And about the fact that they were in the business of making games that you felt like you were good at with a minimum level of effort. And in fact, a lot of people do that. Warcraft 3, in fact, is an incredibly easy game to play if you half-ass it, and it just provides dynamic feedback about how difficult it pushes back on you. So yeah, that sense of mastery and competence and capability is a really important thing to be able to imbue. In video games, people call it juice. You juice the interaction, then you add, you know, camera shake and sparkles and particle effects and stuff like that. And that kind of drama is it's absolutely critical for being able to give people a sense that these actions are significant and they're important. And one of the interesting sort of questions of application design is that, you know, presumably Adobe Photoshop is not juicing interactions, but maybe it should. It certainly takes long enough on startup these days that that it's not completely neutral with regard to the way that it's sort of presenting the cost of operations. So yeah, like I kind of think it would be good for them to think about like the conceptual function of the capabilities they're providing as well, in order to sort of characterize and contrast the feeling of those. Because to your point, like, how do you make people feel awesome is you give them feedback about what's awesome and what's kind of a desirable set of actions within the context of a game, or in the context of an interaction with a platform. So I think video games have something to do there.
Yeah, I think with video games, it's interesting. I only play Battlefield. I don't want to play anything too involved because it'll take too much time. But there, I can go in and I can shoot around, run around, and blow up things and finish whenever I want to. And so part of it is when I manage to get oh my God, I went around the corner and I got you, that kind of thing. That is clearly a reward, so to speak. So it's interesting talking about being told what is good. You know, I'm a keyboard shortcut user like you guys. Many people are not. And I remember Vint Cerf looking at some of these things, and I try to tell him really what's happening, and he thinks that I'm such a wizard. I'm not a wizard, that's the whole point, but that is because it's not his way of working. That's what it looks like. So that's why we have to try to, for our new interactions here, provide the same fluidity, but don't have this, you watch someone else do it and you think they're an expert and you're not an expert. This is probably why this touch here and get this beautiful, simple control panel to change the views will be very important. I'm a huge fan of context menus, but they got to be short and they got to be relevant.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think one of it's interesting reflecting on the disparity between sort of cinematic use of virtual and augmented reality, spatial interfaces and computing, and the practical reality of what people do to actually facilitate interactions within any program. So again, like Minority Report or Iron Man versus Photoshop or Excel. And, you know, the reality is that we'll do Excel in VR, but it's going to look more like it's going to look more like the Excel than it is like Tony Stark sort of creating arbitrary awesome hand cannons and things like that. And so it's worth kind of being aware of the practical realities of what kinds of jobs people need to do in order to imagine what the spatial equivalents are. But I do think that there's going to be some interesting sort of gestural space in order to facilitate things. And, you know, like to your point, Andrew, about the frequency of one set of actions versus another, and whether a dwelling pinch versus a momentary pinch, or a pinch and tap, or a tap and hold versus a momentary tap are the better sort of are the better actions, is part and parcel of constructing this kind of gestural lexicon of actions that has something of the Tony Stark Minority Report, whatever, but is also meaningful enough to be able to do the job of actually freezing cells and being able to create pivot tables.
So on a practical level, I guess that Andrew, you already have a lot to do for Wednesday. You're working on individual document displays primarily, right? Then we need to work at what's in the document metadata, what's in the space metadata. We just need to start saving it. And if you just want to start experimenting with that, Andrew, by writing down coordinates in your way into a JSON, absolutely fine by me. If you want more dialogue or help on that, that's absolutely fine too. Because we need some of these discussions with a wider team where we say, like Peter goes into some strange perspectives. And, when he talks about kind of embedding code in these things, he's right. At some point, we need to do that. So it shouldn't be too simple. I don't know. Fabian, you've been very quiet. What do you think about all this?
I think it's about end juice or empowerment, or it's exciting when you can do more with it, whatever that thing is, being XOR, being programming, being writing. So until we get that point of being able to being surprised by being able to do more, it's a little bit not blind faith, but it's we power through because we know it will be that next step. And until we can make others who don't care about it have that feeling that through the tool or set of practices or both, they are empowered. It's a bit like swimming upstream, and I think people are right to be skeptical, let's say. So I think if we don't want to either make people feel powerful without it being justified, or feel bad because they don't get it, then it's that special moment of, oh wow, I never thought I could do this and now I can. That I think that's what we will get people excited, and then can give us more exciting feedback, or not yet another feature, but the one thing that they need.
Yeah, one of the things that I think about in that context is so I don't know if people ever call it this outside, but when you drag stuff around in Vision OS and you drop it in not an application, they call it dropping it into the void. So you can I think in public, you can pinch and remove like an image, and then it'll go into a photos mode as it's put out into the space, and it'll be rendered in Quick Look in a way that is functionally equivalent at some level to downloading the image and then pressing space and having it open in Quick Look, or double clicking and having it open in Preview. But the sort of entityness, the independence of that artifact as it exists as a consequence of those set of gestures is one much more immediate, in the sense that you can drag it to nowhere, whereas on macOS today, there's nowhere that's nowhere. It's either a Finder window or another application, and depending on what you do to those things. So if you drag something into Google Docs or into Microsoft Word, obviously there's a function for that, but all of the pixels are something, right? They're the terminal there, the whatever. But on VisionOS, there's the void, and when you drag something into nowhere, then it becomes itself, as currently represented by Finder. But on the other hand, also, like, it's already an independent artifact in the sense that it exists in and of itself. It's a file, be it an image file or whatever else. I'm just thinking about everybody's had this moment, and I don't know whether people have done this on Mac OS, but certainly in Windows back in the day, in Teams and things, I had a clipboard manager and I had the ability to manage multiple documents with multiple snippets and provided the slightest bit of context about where they were from. But nevertheless, it was still an independent application that kind of gave reference to those things so that you had a history of them. And so it became another space. But the idea of being able to kind of invoke the thingness of something by just dragging it somewhere, I think is really interesting for being able to separate it. This is, relevant within WebXR where you have full control of it, but also in a general spatial environment, like going from a piece of information being a thing that sort of is compositionally part of a document to itself and a reference that you want to keep alive. I think it's really interesting, and what you do with that in terms of composing and constructing a space that makes sense of things for you is, I think, a really important question to pursue. Have you playing with dragging stuff out, Broden?
Right now, I'm actually just here. I'm on the moon, listening to you, but I'm also watching a video shot with a headset outside with a fire pit this weekend. And I'm just thinking about
nice.
the notion of space and resolution while we're together now. It is such a different thing. And so, yeah, what we've managed to do, I think I told you guys last week, the table of contents is the outline now in, excuse me, in Author is now a free floating window, which is nothing more than a kind of a tech demo. Are you there? You are here, right?
Yeah, we're listening.
Oh, it's just that the screen disappeared. Couldn't see you. I need to have you back. I'm sorry. 1 second.
You in visionOS 1.1 or 1.2?
Good question. Let me find that out.
It doesn't matter particularly. I don't know that there's any particular. I don't have differences. The big one for me was 1.0 to 1.1, which that WebXR update that I wrote the update that I wrote that post for.
You wrote what? But I'm on 1.2.
I wrote that. Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think you would have had it push out. No, the WebXR transient input, the eyes and hands, natural input support, introducing natural input support for WebXR and Vision Pro.
It's a little bit annoying that the eyes here are always active. I put it on a friend today and I could see my eyes on him because I forgot to do guest mode, but now you can't see anything.
Yeah, it's not seeing our faces well enough. Maybe if we get up.
No, but you can't see my eyes. You should be able to see them here, right? It's nothing.
Well, it only does that if the device recognizes another person.
Are you
wasting power otherwise.
really?
Yeah.
I did
Also-
And they wouldn't have been your eyes, Broder. They would have been guest eyes. It's just that maybe your eyes look enough like guest eyes that it threw them up. I would expect that they.
Well, I made a mistake. He didn't go through the setup procedure, so he had to type my password to get in. That's what I mean. So
Persona is still locked. A given registered persona is still locked to Optic ID. So even if you have the password, you won't be able to use their persona because people don't want anybody to be able to be falsified.
At least in a couple of versions ago, that was possible because I saw some people with my eyes.
Interesting. So it's a possibility that the eyesight picks it up, but persona
because
does not.
You can have indeed, you can log in with the passcode and you can have ID with eyes as optional. And then when they do this, persona, at least again, a couple of weeks ago, that was possible. Now I
Right.
don't.
That's interesting. So I would suspect if they went into persona that they wouldn't have been able to see your actual registered persona through that process at least. But eyesight maybe is slightly different, given that it would be difficult. Like you would need to have like identical twins save for eye color or something as a thing that they would be falsifying. Like, if you can't see through the rest of the face behind the Vision Pro, that this person is not that person, then perhaps there are bigger problems afoot.
So can you see my eyes now?
No.
No, we see a photo of your son though.
Oh, you can. Oh, so you're saying that shared? Okay, because
No, we're seeing it reflected on your headset because of
I was
how high
trying to
gloss the.
cheat by making him the person. Let me see if I go back to you guys. Hang on, let me do speaker view. So, okay, Brandel, you're up. Convince the headset you are here.
All right. Well, so one of the challenges is that the device also makes use of a true depth sensor. So unless you have the ability to project me onto a pin cushion or some kind of set of spatial displays such that it has the size of my nose relative to my eyes here, then perhaps this is going to be something of a fool's errand.
The thing that I found with the headset recently, putting it on different people's heads, is first of all, it is a computing platform. Not everybody get it. Some people do, some people don't. That's been a bit of a surprise. As I've said before, the environments is what people really go wow over, which is kind of ironic. When they can't do anything, is what they think is the best. Sorry, just trying to see if Emily can come up and be a human here for me.
It's fine. I will relay compliments to the people who make those spaces. Have you seen Keynote is available for you, right? You can use Keynote.
Yeah, I just saw that, and I was going to show that to a friend today. I've known him basically my whole life, and he finally comes here, and then yeah. Anyway, he didn't have time, but it is very, very impressive Keynote to be able to stand there on the stage. But you should be able to have someone in the audience at some point.
That would be nice. Can you not? I mean, it's believable that you can. I haven't used Keynote maybe at all.
What? It is cool.
In Vision OS.
Yeah, no, it's super cool in here. The strange thing is, we get this thing to have on the headset to protect this, but what about inside? Nothing. So I use this.
Yeah.
I wrapped this around it when I moved about, just a big lens cleaning cloth. But
Yeah, that's smart. Well, I
I
don't
see.
even get that. I get this. So you have one over me on that.
That is
It's
cool. Yeah,
heavy.
I stick it in my camera bag so it looks like a normal thing.
Yeah, I think this was no, actually the last prototype that didn't look like a production unit was a lot bigger. So this has only ever been for this scale of unit, but I guess it's just so that it doesn't look like it, and it's sort of robust enough to be able to fall off my bike.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's impressive stuff, but it is a bit heavy. I found that if I use a hoodie under it, it helps quite a lot. But that's not always practical. Right, so with the immediate issue at hand, I guess, Fabienne, it doesn't seem very relevant to you in the beginning, or does it? We'll obviously make sure you get the same data, so you can play with it in your world.
I did not understand. The data, you mean like the JSON for the proceedings for Hypertext 2023?
Yeah, but also the spatial layout.
Yeah, I mean, if you do send it, it's not the format I tinkered with last time, but I don't think there should be a huge difference, so should be interpretable.
Yeah. Andrew, any topics or questions from your end?
Nothing new, really. No. Yeah,
So
just working on the document stuff on my end.
So the way we're going to deal with document uploading for now is simply the click to upload the JSON file, right?
Yeah, I think that's fine for now.
Yeah.
Right now, mine only supports that for the workspace. So you can save workspace layouts. I think you're talking about wanting to also save library layouts now as well. If I'm understanding it correctly, you say like create layouts, and I'm not sure exactly if you're saying like we as developers create different layouts, then save those as presets, or if you're saying like the user can create a library layout and save that. I guess I should ask for clarification there.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm saying both, but primarily the user. So
Okay,
that,
gotcha.
you know, once you've got all kinds of things everywhere, it's really annoying to have to lose it, which is one of my prime issues with the Vision Pro. You can put things, really make your room amazing, and then you have a restart and it's all gone. You know, it's a version 1 product, so fair enough, but yeah, that is important. Fabian.
Yeah, a quick word on this. That was kind of the demo I wanted to share earlier. I won't do it with you guys because you'll get it without me bothering with screen copy and all. But the idea is at some point I've made a basic game on how to, let's say Minecraft, something like this, where you have your cubes and you put them in place, and then you have 4 different of cubes. So it's more for like a voxel paint thing. Very simple, not even snapping. But indeed, the thing was, if I reload the page, I lose everything. And what I've done is I took all those voxels, stringified, like a JSON, and I put this as the hash in the URL. So I got mypage.com/hash, and then all the cubes with their position, rotation, and color. And of course, if you have millions of cubes, that's not going to work. But if you have a couple of dozens or even maybe hundreds, that fits. So it means if I refresh the page, everything is there in place, but also that URL, if I put it in the chat, I might actually have a URL like this now. But if you open it, then it's there. And I think as a very basic way to both maintain the state and having it shareable, I mean, it works easy. And I think in terms of WebXR, not just being like, oh, it's cross-platform or like using the URL as a first-class citizen, I think it's quite powerful. And I think it is surprising when people like, oh, you get the URL, which has all the content in it. You don't need to install anything, but you also have some content right there. I think it's like the same way, for example, if we look at the Zoom URL, I mean, I'm using the web page, but if you use the app, it's hidden, but you get like the room and then the code to access it. You didn't have to select any room or input any code. So I think that kind of solution, even though not perfect, it's still quite powerful and makes WebXR special.
Just trying to fix my file here. Yeah. Actually, I'm going to share a screen with you for a second. So this is what you saw earlier, but I copied it into a new document. It's a complete mess. So first thing I'm going to do is hide all the people. Then I'm going to bring them back and align them on the left. So here they are. That kind of chunking, I think we absolutely must have, because now it's out of the way. What I want to do is be able to change the font size, which I can do here. Not so easy here. Yeah, it is a bit small, isn't it? So now we can do auto layouts a little bit. So I just do this and press V for vertical, boom. So now we're going to do, this one doesn't work with a keyboard shortcut, but documents, hide, take everything else, move it over to the side here so I can have some space. And then I bring back documents again. Here they are. Do same kind of layout, but the other way, no, this way, this way. These are all the normal keyboard shortcuts you would have in a normal Mac app. But I don't think we can rely on people caring about that. So that's why I think it's so important to have these types of commands on a big thing at the bottom of the screen, the triangular Andrew area. So here we have a location. Move those over here. See, the selections don't work right. Yeah, here we go. Isn't that's better. See, now it's becoming useful, right? These are workshops. So seeing me just fiddle around with these obvious things. Here's this is a keyword. What are your thoughts when you imagine this in a better space with more controls?
Yeah, I can see it working well. Of course, like right now, looks like some of the commands say vertical snaps to your screen resolution, so that's not going to be a thing in VR. You don't want it to just wrap all the way around you. But we can, of course, set any kind of cap we'd like.
Yeah, well, the way that I think it looked like at one point what you did, Frodo, was use extents of the upper and lower bound of the selection in order to set the frame of how they should be distributed. And that's how you distribute objects in Illustrator. Like I have a lot of experience with Illustrator, and so that's really interesting. It also made me think about, you know, what when you were saying, Fabian, about URL fragments or hashes and providing layout information within them. One of the things that we tend to do, because we can in computing a lot of the time, is just be super verbose about saying, here is the exact XY coordinate of all of these things, when in fact there might be a briefer, terser representation of that conversation, not conversation, of that like the thing kind of thing that you would say in conversation about what you've done is, oh, I've made it so all of the names are on the left. And so having terser representations of those constraint applications is a really interesting thing to be able to use as a both for brevity with regard to something like the URL fragment, and for the purposes of being able to conceptually encode and describe what it is that a piece of information has, what a layout is in support of. So I think that's an interesting thing to play with. It's just like, rather than, obviously, you know, your application needs to have the full, you know, X and Y of all of the objects, trivially, like in order to present them in that place. But in terms of what somebody has done by virtue of making a specific selection and aligning them or anything like that, like being able to have that described as well as sort of defined down to the nth degree is an interesting line.
So one problem with the current one is that you see these lines going here into the papers. You can't see what they point at. So what I'm going to try to do for my Mac version is, let's say we've selected Alan Kay. In the definition of Alan Kay is the word USA. So it highlights USA. So we may or may not even need the lines. The lines have a secondary value, but they're not the whole story. If something points to Alan Kay, it's also highlighted, but not as much, because this is kind of useless.
Well, it gives you directional information, and you know that's one of the things that I was talking about earlier, is this idea that actionable directional information allows you to make decisions that lead you on to a subsequent step. And to that end, it's not useless. You know that it's in that approximate region, but I agree, bolding and other things like that could assist with being able to sort of target the next action. But one thing that a bolding can do that made me think, when you were talking about Dini's, how prolific Dini was with authorship last year, is have something that actually annotates the degree of connection once you have some body of things selected. So if 20 of the objects that you have selected have a degree or have a connection to, say, narrative, then that's reflected in some state on that node outside. But yeah,
Yeah, we need to
lots of good stuff.
we need to experiment with how to make that useful.
Yeah,
You're
Andrew.
absolutely right. So one thing also, if I now top right here select spatial hypertext, it's a strong line down to Mark Bernstein, because in the definition of spatial hypertext, it's a reference to Mark Bernstein, right? But when Mark Bernstein is kind of along other things, it's hard to see. So you've already seen this design. But what I also think we need to do is to provide a nice mechanism whereby the user can say, select the children off, or something like that, or copy everything that I have taken plus what it is connected. So this is where it's beginning to get kind of interesting with some kind of submenus or whatever. And also the different categorizations, like the people here, Vannevar Bush and Mark Bernstein, they haven't authored any papers, but they have referred to them, so they're not the same kind of person. Right, that's yet another thing. If you want to know about who's written about history, chances are in this field they will have cited him. So 7 hypertexts, historiographies, and here. To be able to, so Apple has the term spatial. I like the term high resolution. Just different ways of looking at the same thing. But the point is, this can easily become a toy. It can easily become a demo. I really think it's obviously our sorry, Bruce Horn texting, I'll read that after. Our responsibility to make sure that it's actually useful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as you're moving those things around, something else that made me think about is the way in which you could possibly augment or alter the state of the connected nodes based on the proximity. So we can see that collective writing is connected to something down there, likely to be the co-constructed readings of the internet or something like that. And if you drag your mouse down toward it while you have collective writing selected, then you could have some activation level reflected about that node and connection, or the two together. So I think that, yeah, like I was saying about Juice, having a sort of a repertoire of ways that you can represent activation or connection or density or importance would be an interesting thing to play with, because yeah, like if all of these entities kind of live together, they have attributes, and those attributes, even if they're not like, normally things are spatially within the same connected graph. So if you look at a map of London, then Trafalgar Square is normally where it is, and it's not out. It doesn't suddenly sort of jump out to be by Wimbledon. But and so when we have something that we can move around arbitrarily, we lose that, and as a wayfinding device, it sort of goes away. But if you have a set of attributes that you can rely on, that like the Trafalgar Square node always behaves the way it does, then that sort of has the benefit of allowing you to see that it's still what it is.
Yes. I think that is crucial. I think that navigation needs waypoints. You need something to hold on to, absolutely. So one of the things Adam said earlier when I played around with this, because this is a map of the world made by me just for fun, just to have Canada, USA here. I think, yeah, Brazil should obviously be there. This is a kind of thing that should be able to be its own unit. So you could move this in, and that kind of like a stamp, and then you take it out again. So you should be able to have specific things, like, let's say you want authors on the left, like we happen to have here. That would be one of your standard things. But I'm so excited to actually have this built now, so we can start experimenting with what feels right.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Look at the responsiveness of this. It's completely smooth. It's absolutely insane.
We're seeing it at sort of 4 frames per second just because it's over Zoom. But and that's wonderful. It's really important to be able to have that responsiveness.
Yeah. It is. So yeah, good chatting. I hope we can properly get on with building.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all very good. So I hope to see you guys on Wednesday.
What am I doing on Wednesday? I can probably make it. So far, I do not have a lot going on. I'm just going through the final throes of having everybody approve what I'm going to be saying for WWDC.
That's going to be interesting.
It's just what is websites on Vision OS. You know, we have every year. You know, we have not even like necessarily new features. Something that I want to talk about is, and I've mentioned in this group a bunch before, is the fact that we have speech synthesis. Like that's neat. I think it would be worthwhile people thinking about how they can leverage it, and speech recognition, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see websites as being nodes in a network and have the to be allowed to view the connections and such. So it'll be interesting. Fabian, are you here or are you there? Are you showing us something or can we adjourn?
I love to show you something, but it's too late. So I'll tease you and I'll show you something next time.
If it's a minute,
All right,
I have
look
a
forward to
minute. If you want to show.
It's never a minute.
All right. Okay.
Know thyself.
Let's make that an early item on Wednesday then. I'll put it on the agenda actually.
Don't, because maybe everything will be broken then. But
Put it in anyway.
I think it's something that both of you specifically would be curious about. But I won't tease more.
Excellent. I look forward to it.
I'm putting in Fabian's small demo. If it's not ready, it's not ready, but at least, you know, it's there. Dini likes us to stick to the timeline. All right. See you Wednesday then.
Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Cool. See you.